you feel a shift in your relationship with your grown children? Perhaps you realize that instead of seeking your advice, they ignore it. Instead of respecting your opinions, they dismiss them easily. Even worse, do you feel like you've become a burden in their lives? Don't be quick to blame yourself or accuse your children of being insensitive. This is a natural stage in the family life cycle. However, it's important to recognize this change and proactively adjust your behavior to maintain respect and connection within the family. If you feel your children are treating you disrespectfully, don't be discouraged. Instead of getting angry and accusatory, apply these smart strategies. They will not only help you regain respect, but also strengthen family relationships, bringing peace and happiness to both you and your children. A common mistake many parents make as they get older is trying to please their children in every way, hoping to receive love and respect in return. We give in to their wishes, say yes when we want to say no, and put their needs above our own. But the harsh truth is, the more you try to please, the more respect you lose. Because respect doesn't come from self-sacrifice, but from self-respect. When you always give in, always agree, always try to keep the peace, you're teaching your children that your feelings don't matter. And once they believe that, they will easily take you for granted. I remember a woman named Margaret, a strong and independent woman when she was young. But as she got older, she started letting her children decide everything. She rearranged her schedule to suit their needs, kept her opinions to herself, and even ignored the disrespectful way they spoke to her. "I just want to keep the family harmonious," she told me. But what happened? Her children stopped respecting her. They saw her as someone who would always adjust, always agree, always be silent. She thought she was keeping the peace, but in reality, she was losing her voice. So, if your children don't respect you, the first step isn't to demand respect, it's to stop acting like you need it. Set boundaries, say no when necessary, and express your opinions even if they don't like them. When you start respecting yourself, they will start looking at you differently, and over time, that respect will return to you. For example, if your son, David, always calls you at inappropriate hours to complain about his job, instead of continuing to listen to his complaints in the hope that he will be grateful to you, say politely but firmly, "David, I'm so sorry, but I'm busy right now. Can we talk tomorrow?" When your children dismiss your opinions, interrupt you, or treat you disrespectfully, your first reaction might be to argue, remind them of what you've done for them, and demand that they listen. But trust me, that will only make you more frustrated because arguing never works. Think about it. When was the last time you convinced someone to respect you by arguing? Respect doesn't come from words, but from presence, from how you behave, from how you react when someone tests your patience. If you respond to disrespect with anger, you're only confirming what they already believe, that they have power over you. I know a man named Frank, a retired teacher who spent his whole life leading a classroom with confidence. But at home, his grown children started treating him as an afterthought. They ignored his advice, dismissed his concerns, and sometimes even laughed when he tried to correct them. At first, he argued back, trying to prove that he was still worthy of respect. But the more he argued, the worse things got. Then one day, Frank changed. Instead of arguing, he started listening, really listening. He stopped chasing respect with words, and instead behaved like a man who already had it. He spoke calmly, with wisdom, without needing to win. And gradually, his children started to notice. They saw a man who wasn't craving their approval, who didn't need to prove himself, but who was simply strong. Therefore, if your children don't respect you, don't fight for it. Show them what respect looks like by how you treat yourself. Maintain your dignity, speak with confidence, and most importantly, never lower yourself to their level. When you stand your ground with grace, they will sense it, and in time, they will follow your example. For instance, if your daughter, Ashley, constantly interrupts you when you are talking, instead of getting angry and scolding her, calmly say, "I'll continue speaking when you're ready to listen." One of the hardest lessons to learn as you get older is that you can't rely on your children for emotional fulfillment. You can love them deeply, and you may want them to love and respect you in return. But the moment they sense that you need them to feel valued, the power dynamic in the relationship shifts. The truth is, people, even your children, respect those who are emotionally independent. When you rely on them for validation, love, or attention, it puts pressure on them. And instead of feeling grateful, they start to feel burdened. They may withdraw. They may start to treat you with impatience or even annoyance. And the more you chase their love, the less freely they give it. I know a woman named Helen, a kind mother who gave everything to her children. As they grew up and got busy with their own lives, she found herself waiting by the phone, hoping they would call. When they didn't call, she would call them, often too frequently. She reminded them how much she missed them, how she wished they would visit more often. But instead of drawing them closer, it pushed them further away. They started seeing her calls as an obligation, rather than something they looked forward to. Then one day, Helen did something different. She stopped waiting, she stopped calling first. Instead, she started focusing on herself, finding new hobbies, going out with friends, taking care of her own happiness. And a surprising thing happened. Her children started calling more. They started respecting her time, seeing her as someone with a full life of her own. Therefore, the less you rely on your children to make you feel needed, the more they will start to value your presence. When you show them that you can stand on your own 2 feet, they will start to respect you not out of obligation, but because they genuinely admire the life you've built for yourself. For example, if you always call your son, William, every day to check in on his life, stop calling him every day, and instead, find other activities to fill your time. One of the biggest reasons children lose respect for their parents is because the parents allow it to happen. If you allow your children to talk to you disrespectfully, dismiss your opinions, or treat you like your time and feelings don't matter, they will continue to do it. Not because they are bad people, but because everyone, especially family, will always treat you the way you allow them to. Setting boundaries doesn't mean cutting off your children or creating conflict. It means calmly and firmly deciding what kind of behavior you will and will not accept. And more importantly, it means enforcing those boundaries when they are crossed. I remember a man named Robert, a retired businessman who spent his entire life running a company with discipline and confidence. But when it came to his grown children, he struggled. They would interrupt him when he spoke, dismiss his concerns, and even criticize the way he lived his life. At first, he tolerated it. He told himself it wasn't worth the argument. But over time, he realized that every time he stayed silent, he was teaching them that their behavior was acceptable. So, one day, Robert changed his approach. When his son interrupted him, he calmly said, "I'll continue speaking when you're ready to listen." When his daughter dismissed his opinion, he simply replied, "You don't have to agree with me, but I expect you to respect me." And when they continued to push his limits, he made it clear that if they couldn't treat him with basic respect, he wouldn't spend time with them. And you know what happened? They started listening. At first, they resisted, but over time, they realized that their father wasn't backing down. They saw that he valued himself enough to demand respect. And because of that, they started giving him that respect. Therefore, if your children don't respect you, it's time to ask yourself, are you allowing it to happen? Because if you don't set boundaries, they won't set them for you. And if you don't stand up for yourself, no one else will. For instance, if your son, Kevin, constantly comes to your house without calling first, instead of being annoyed but still opening the door for him, say politely, "Kevin, I'm happy you came to visit, but next time please call first. I often have plans of my own." One of the quickest ways to lose respect is to keep giving to people who don't appreciate it. And as parents, we do this more often than we realize. We give our time, our energy, our support, even when it's not acknowledged, even when it's taken for granted, even when we only get demands in return. But the truth is, when you give to someone who doesn't appreciate it, you're not building love, you're not building respect, you're building expectation. They stop seeing your kindness as something valuable and start seeing it as something they're entitled to. And the moment you stop, they don't feel grateful, they feel inconvenienced. I know a man named George, a father who was always generous with his children. He helped them financially whenever they needed it, dropped everything to support them, and even rearranged his life to suit their needs. But instead of gratitude, he only got complaints. They didn't say thank you. They expected more. And worst of all, when he finally needed their help, they were too busy. Then one day, George changed. He stopped overgiving, he stopped offering help before being asked, and most importantly, he started saying no when necessary. At first, his children were frustrated. They didn't understand why he wasn't catering to them anymore. But over time, something shifted. They started valuing his time. They started appreciating his efforts. Because suddenly they realized that his generosity wasn't infinite. It was a gift, not a guarantee. Therefore, if you feel your children aren't respecting your time, your efforts, or your kindness, take a step back. Ask yourself, are you giving more than you should? And if so, what would happen if you stopped? Because when you teach people that your generosity is contingent on respect, they will start treating it as such. For instance, if you always pay for dinner when you go out with your daughter, Tiffany, say, "Tiffany, it's my treat today. You can treat me next time." One of the most powerful ways to regain your children's respect is to show them that your happiness doesn't revolve around them. As parents, it's natural to dedicate ourselves to our children, making them the center of our lives. But as we get older, that dynamic changes. And if you've spent your whole life prioritizing them, they may start to see you as someone who has nothing else going on. People respect those who have their own purpose, their own interests, their own sense of fulfillment. And if your children see that you rely on them for entertainment, validation, or meaning, they may start to feel smothered, or worse, they may start to see you as someone who doesn't have a life of their own. I know a woman named Eleanor, a widow in her 70s. After her husband passed away, she poured all her energy into her children's lives, constantly checking in, offering unsolicited advice, expecting them to fill the void her husband had left. But instead of drawing them closer, it pushed them further away. They visited less often. Their calls became shorter, and Eleanor felt more lonely than ever. Then she made a choice. She joined a book club. She started traveling with friends. She volunteered at a local community center. She stopped making her children the center of her world, and an amazing thing happened. Her children started reaching out more. They were curious about what she was doing. They admired her independence. They respected her. Therefore, if your children don't respect you, ask yourself, do they see you as someone who has a full, meaningful life? Or do they see you as someone who is waiting for their attention? Because when you show them that you're living rather than just existing, they will start to see you in a completely different light. For example, if you spend most of your time waiting for your children to visit, find new activities to get involved in, such as joining a book club or taking a new class. Respect isn't something you can demand from your children. It's something you inspire through how you behave, through how you set boundaries, and through how you live your life. If they start treating you with less consideration, less concern, or less respect, don't waste your energy getting angry. Instead, change your approach. Stop chasing their approval, because the less you need it, the more they will give it. Lead by example, because your dignity speaks louder than your words. Withdraw emotional dependence, because the more self-sufficient you are, the more they will respect your presence. Set boundaries, because people will only treat you as well as you demand them to. Stop giving when there's no appreciation, because when generosity is taken for granted, it loses its value. And most importantly, build a life outside of them, because people respect those who have their own purpose, their own joy, and their own sense of fulfillment. If you do these things, an amazing thing will happen. Your children will start to see you in a different light, not as someone who is waiting for their attention, but as someone who commands respect simply by being themselves. And over time, that respect will return to you, not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. Remember, it's important to self-assess, to honestly re-examine your current relationship with your children. Where are you on the respect scale? Choose one action. Start with one small change in how you interact with your children. Be patient and consistent. Focus on yourself. Invest in your happiness and personal growth. When you shine from within, those around you will feel it. And don't be afraid to seek support. Share your difficulties with friends, family, or a counselor. Thank you for watching this video. We would love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use in your life. Your thoughts are very important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you liked this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue creating great content to inform and inspire you. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Don't forget, press this subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss other valuable videos. Share this video with people you know who need it. And most importantly, believe in yourself and your ability to change your relationship with your children. You deserve to be respected and loved.